Algebra 2, Section 5.3 deals with factoring. Now I'm going to go ahead and spend some time reviewing of what you should have learned in Algebra 1, and then we're going to go into a more difficult concept for Algebra 2. Now reviewing, there's two types of factoring that you'll see, well, multiple types, but this one is a familiar one. This is a binomial, so it has only two terms. And what to do here is I take out what they have in common. So basically, 5x squared plus 10x, I go ahead and they both contain, this is the same thing as 5 times 2x, right? So they both have a 5 that I can take out, and they both have an x and an x that I can take out. So if I took out a 5x from here, I would be left with just x, and if I took out a 5x from here, I'd be left with a 2. Now, remember when factoring is opposite of foiling, you move backwards. So if I factored this, then in order to see if I got it correct, I would FOIL it back. So if I FOIL this, I get 5x squared and then 10x. Alright, so this is in fact how to simplify that. The next one has to do with the two bubble method, if you remember, and you just create two bubbles. Now this works for any quadratic equation that the a, so the number in front of the x squared, is 1. So there's really no number except 1. All I need to do is take this last number, 81, and I need to factor it. And I'm looking for two numbers multiplied together that gives me 81, but added together gives me negative 18. Okay? Two numbers multiplied together to get me 81, but added together to get me negative 18. So my factors of 81 is 9 and 9, right? But that plus that gives me positive 18. So let's try negative 9 and negative 9. Well, negative 9 plus negative 9 is negative 18. So this is in fact my two answers. So I'm going to take those two numbers and I'm going to put it in my bubble. Each one, because there's no number in front of the x, this is x and this is x, minus 9 minus 9. And this is my answer. Alright? And if I were to check again, I just FOIL it back out, and I should get, I would be getting x squared minus 18x plus 81. So that's just a little review. Go ahead and write it down and don't forget the vocabulary. And we're going to do another example. This is more of what you're going to be seeing in your homework. And basically, instead of just dealing with a quadratic equation where a equals 1, you're going to be dealing with a quadratic equation where the a is a number. And in order to find it, I don't just take the last number, but I take these two numbers, okay, and I find two numbers that gives me, that when multiplied together, product is multiplication, right? So two numbers that when a and c, what's a and c? This is a, 2 times negative 5, which is negative 10. Multiplied together gets me 10, but added together gets me negative 3. Okay? B, sum of b. So let's look at the factors of 10. 10 is 5 times 2, 5 times negative 2. This gives me 5 plus negative 2 gives me a positive 3, and that's not what I'm trying to get, so let's try another one. 5 times negative 5 times positive 2, this plus this equals a negative 3. So my special numbers are negative 5 and 2, because when I multiply them together, I get this number, negative 10. But then when I add them together, it gives me b. So I take those two numbers and I'm going to multiply, I'm going to substitute in for b. So this should substitute for b. What that means is I'm going to rewrite this equation. 2y squared, and instead of negative 3, I'm going to put negative 5y plus 2y. minus 5 equals 0. So I haven't changed anything because negative 5 plus 2 is still negative 3. I've just rewrote it in a different way. So once I do that, then I can factor things out. I can see what they have in common. Here's the trick. This 2 have nothing in common with negative 5, but it does have something in common with y. So how I'm going to rewrite this is instead of negative 5y, I'm going to put the 2 first, and I'll show you why we need to do that in a second. I'm going to put positive 2y minus 5y. And the reason I'm doing that is because then I'm going to be able to factor. Remember the very first problem example we did, we took out what was in common? I'm going to be able to factor these two. Okay? So, for example, I can take 2 out of this one, and I end up with 2. And I also can take a y. If I take a 2 out of this, 2y out of this, I end up with just y here because it's squared, so I have 2 y's. Plus, since I took out everything, I have nothing left, so that means it's y plus 1. Now this one, I can take out a negative 5y. So, sorry, I can take out a 5. I end up with y minus 1. Now the problem is that, y plus 1. Because I took out a negative 5 from here. So one more time, let me explain that. I apologize. I took out a 2y from here, I ended up with y, plus 2 here. Now I'm going to take out a negative 5, so this negative 5 leaves me with the positive y, and this negative 5 gives me with a positive 1. My goal is to get these two the same. When I get them the same, then I can take this and I end up with 2y minus 5 in one parentheses, and since they're both multiplied by y plus 1, that becomes my factor. Now, when I go into here, I'm going to go ahead and solve. I'm going to finish by solving. So once I have this, it's going to be equal to 0. So these are equal to 0. Because these two bubbles are being multiplied by each other, if one is 0, the other one is automatically 0. Now my two answers is that I'm going to see what makes this 0, because then the whole thing will be 0, and what makes this 0, because the whole thing will be 0. So my first answer is 2y minus 5 equals 0. Well, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. I end up with 2y equals 5. Then I divide by 2, and I end up with y equals 5 over 2. That's my first answer. My next one is y plus 1 equals 0, and I subtract 1 from both sides, and y equals negative 1. So my two answers are negative 1 and 5 over 2. So let's review that real quick. I'm going to find my special numbers, which is negative 5 and 2 in this case. I'm going to replace it for b. Once I replace it for b, then I'm going to start pairing up so that I can take out common things. So I took out what was in common, 2y was in common, and I ended up with y plus 1. Negative 5 is what I had in common between the two terms, and I ended up with times y plus 1. So I took y plus 1 and I put it in its own bubble, and then the numbers in front of y plus 1 together and put its own bubble. And then I set each one equal to 0 so that I can get my answer, which is y equals 5 over 2 and y equals negative 1. So go ahead and try page 256, number 9, and see if you can understand. Don't forget the steps. So page 256, number 9, and I will see you in class.